Triangle Strategy looks pretty good. Quite literally in its visuals, as well as in what it has to offer. It's an upcoming strategy RPG and the next game by Tomoya Asano, who also worked on Octopath Traveler as one might expect, since it shares the same awesome HD 2D look, where the game looks like it just added a third dimension to a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis RPG. The remake of Live Alive will also utilize this look, as well as the Dragon Quest III remake. Now, I don't want to see every 16-bit era remake or throwback getting this treatment, but a few games here and there are highly appreciated. And I think this style works especially well in an isometric game like this one. The characters themselves are sprites, but the world around them is in 3D, but with low-res looking textures and decorated with flat objects. It emulates the style of games like Final Fantasy Tactics or Ogre Battle really well, but offers a better view of the battlefield. But while the camera is able to smoothly turn, it only stops at 90-degree angles, unnecessarily so. Maybe they didn't want the sprites to look weird and out of place in the environment at certain angles, but on the other hand, you are able to tilt the camera angle up and down, so that might not be it. Maybe they just wanted to stay traditional and force this isometric perspective, which is fine, I guess, but in addition to turn-based tactic battles, you can sometimes explore an area and talk to NPCs to find or buy items and get useful information for later encounters or just a few lore tidbits. But walking around in these sections feels a bit weird. Movement is still limited to the 4 diagonal directions, which has always been strange to control with the D-pad. Using the analog stick though is a bit too responsive, I guess, which makes it a bit hard to make precise movements. Not that it matters much, because there's no danger in these exploration sections, at least it hasn't been so far. Battles in this game are mostly par for the course for strategy RPGs. Characters take turns in order of their speed value and can move and attack whenever it is their turn to act. Certain environmental conditions like ice or elevation can decrease a character's movement range, and enemy units block movement completely. To attack, a character needs to get as close to an enemy as his attack range indicates, which is 1 most of the time for melee fighters, though there are some weapons with greater range, and archers and mages can attack from afar, of course. Most characters can only attack once per turn, and combatants in this game have a lot of HP, even in the beginning, so battles tend to go on for a while. There are a few ways to deplete an enemy's HP quicker though. Striking an enemy from behind results in a critical hit every time. Certain status ailments like sleep result in the same effect. Also, if 2 characters flank an enemy and one of them attacks, the other one gets to make a follow-up attack. Critical hit rules still apply. So positioning is really important in this game. I mean, it always is in a strategy game, but here it's this tiny bit more important. Then there's special abilities you unlock by leveling up your heroes or by spending skill points on them. These abilities use up TP, of which they recharge 1 per turn. Some characters are resistant or weak against certain abilities or weapon types, so that's even more you can use to your advantage. But all these rules apply to your characters as well, so if you're not careful, the enemy team can turn your heroes into mincemeat pretty quickly. And my guess is that the full game will add a lot more attack types and modifiers that can turn the tides of battle in an instant. The game doesn't feature permadeath so far, because it seems every character is important to the story, so it's not a problem if one of your characters dies during a battle, aside from them missing out on XP. There's more to Triangle Strategy than just fighting though. Ironically enough, this game is about a peace treaty after a long war between the 3 nations of this world, or continent or whatever. And the protagonist is kind of an ambassador for his homeland and a mediator between the 3 nations. But well, it's also a story full of intrigue and betrayal and of old hatred. A story that takes itself pretty seriously. Most characters are stern and serious, and while some of them can be loud and boisterous, it's not played for comedy. This adds a certain weight to the dialogue, which is well written, but can also lead it to drag on a bit. So far I'm fine with it, but I hope that a bit more is done in the full game to lighten up the mood once in a while. Golden Age and PS1 era Final Fantasy understood how to include some light-hearted fun in a dark and serious story, and while I don't think I'll see anything of that caliber in Triangle Strategy, I hope to get at least a little bit of variety in tone. But well, that solemn tone might get you into the mood for the hard decisions you have to make during the story. At certain points you have to make a decision where to go or which goal to pursue. I'm not sure how much these will affect the overall story. My guess is that there will be multiple endings or at least different flavors to the ending. Maybe a Fire Emblem style sliding card sequence to see how all the characters you met fared after the game. And the game tells you that different characters might join your course depending on your choices, so that's at least one consequence. So maybe some side characters can either be allies or enemies depending on your story. But that's just assumption. In the trial version I had to decide which nation to visit, and I got to recruit a mage from the Desert Kingdom. And it's safe to assume that I'd gotten a different character in the Mountain Kingdom. Making these decisions isn't just a matter of choosing a dialogue option, though. The game uses a pretty weird but interesting democracy system, where your 7 closest friends and allies get to vote on what to do next. You yourself don't get a vote, but have to follow the democratic decision. But you can influence your comrades by talking to them before the vote. Depending on the decision, each character has a stronger or weaker conviction, which affects your chances of influencing them. Most of the time you get to choose between 2 dialogue choices for a character and a hidden third choice you'll have to discover in previous conversations. And some of these choices can be unlocked hours before the actual choice, or are part of a chain that leads up to a particular piece of information. And most of the time these hidden choices have a greater chance to influence a character. But the protagonist's own convictions also affect the outcome. The game asks you at times for a response. These can be utilitarian or compassionate or dominant, and depending on how you act and what responses you give, the main character's presence changes. So, as I understand it, it's easier for you to convince a party member to make a power move, for example, if you're already a more dominant leader. So let's see where they're going with this system over the course of the game. And yeah, there you have it. Triangle Strategy is a game with a great art direction that I might actually be able to play for longer than a few hours. Octopath Traveler was a bit too grindy for my liking, but strategy RPGs tend to not be grindy at all, since most of the time the game doesn't give you many options to level in between main missions. It's more about how you distribute the XP between your party members, because characters only get awarded XP for actually performing an action in battle. The story tries to go for highbrow political intrigue, and while it is written well enough, it can look a bit out of place with these 16-bit style sprites and simplified animations. Character portraits during dialogues would have helped with that, I guess. But I'm looking forward to that release and hope I don't get disappointed. And if you want to check it out for yourselves, you can just download it on a Switch. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day. That's it from Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.
これなら私の敵ではない食らえ当然の結果だ悪く思うなよ